Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another live at the waterhole session on this fine Sunday. Starting off here at Mantis Founders Lodge. The rhinos are really living it up. It's me, Kenneth Gamble. I'll be your guide for the session. Please remember to send through all your questions and comments. The show is live and interactive, and it really just adds another dimension. It certainly is looking quite pleasant in the Eastern Cape at the moment. In the Lowveld it's quite overcast and rainy. Parts of the Kruger National Park are flooding. I fortunately have not experienced any flooding yet, but it is quite wet at the moment, and just another one of those parts of nature, the cycles of the wet and dry seasons. But fingers crossed, hopefully everyone out there is safe, and it should be great for birding, and at least the animals will have good grazing if this rain continues. These rhinos are just looking super relaxed and at peace in their little waterhole. Oh wow, we had one right in front of the camera here. Everyone's got their little spot. Anyway, I'm sure our rhinos are not going anywhere. We'll probably come back to them a bit later, but there's a bit of a surprise waiting for us at another location. We've just caught the bum end of the sighting, but it is a hyena and a predator nonetheless. Not something we often get to see it live at the waterhole sessions. Fingers crossed it maybe comes back, but it does seem to be like it is moving on with a purpose. Typical hyena. They'll lie around doing nothing for most of the day, and then when you want to look at them, they'll give you the slip. I'm not sure if I see a bird of movement there in those bushes, but that might just be the wind. Now there is a bit of movement. It's moving from left to right, but that's quite sad. Would it be nice to watch our hyena maybe bask or relax in the sun a bit? I'm sure our zoomies are doing their best to try pick up the hyena. I'm not sure if I can see something, but it's very difficult. The joys of observing nature, and very rarely plays out the way we wish it does. I think bird watching is a good example of that. I regularly find birding on foot to be easier because it makes you more mobile to reposition and try see the bird as it moves around. But of course, in a lot of national parks, it's dangerous to be on foot, so we make do with what we can in vehicles. But that's what gives success its flavor. When you are able to finally come right and get a good sighting, it makes it worthwhile. I think we are going to pop on over to Elephant Pan. Our hyena has obviously gone to lie down in the shade, so we'll carry on our journey today. Yeah, there we go. Some elephants taking a nice bath. I must say, Elephant Pan is really looking quite full. I imagine the rains have been very prolific in Botswana at the moment. I think that's how a lot of parts of the Kruger Park are going to be looking by the end of this week. Some areas are forecasted to get almost 500 mils of rain, and if I can just put that in perspective to some of the viewers, that's essentially an entire season's worth of rainfall in about the space of a week. So you can imagine what strain it puts on the soil when it comes to water retention and rivers, etc. But at the same time, it really sets up the bush for the dry season. Your vegetation will go quite far. There'll be surface water everywhere. A lot of migratory birds pulled in for these changes. So it is a great time, but obviously it can be quite dangerous when the floods are taking place. It's wonderful hearing all these sounds here at Elephant Pan, elephants splashing and playing around. Could also hear a few starlings in the background there. Just want to check which one I think it is. I want to double check my distribution. It's either Birchall's or Meaves starling, but I've drawn a bit of a blank. I can't remember what the distribution is for that area. I'm pretty sure it's Meaves starling now. No, it could actually be either or. I see they both occur alongside each other in this part of Botswana. I'm a bit more used to the large separation we get in South Africa. They don't really co-occur much. It does sound a bit like Birchall starling to me. Also have a few lapwings calling in the background there. It's nice to have these pretty soundscapes. Sorry for that abrupt change. We've just moved here back to Mhlali Mzuri. Obviously the hyena is quite active, so we need to be quick if we want to see it. It would be quite nice if he or her chooses to lay down, that we can maybe focus a bit. I think it has stopped there in the shade now. It does seem to maybe be lying down. I don't see any movement. I think it has gone stationary. It's a bit tough to see, but I believe it's center of our screen there in the shade. You can see a bit of movement still. But that bodes well for our sightings. It's actually quite exciting to have a predator on one of the cams for once. certainly is challenging to pick out this hyena in the dappled shade. I'm not sure if we're a bit far to the left. It might be a bit more right. There we go. Sitting very peacefully there in the shade. Oh, that's stunning. Hopefully it decides to work with us and sits here for a bit longer. Interesting to see it on its own here, but very nice treat indeed. Harry Lolly was mentioning it's very hot in the Cape, or the Western Cape, and there's lots of firefighters battling wildfires all across the Western Cape. Yeah, certainly not a easy task. It's quite challenging. So our hyenas now moving off a little bit. Obviously a bit of a busy body today. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of adverse weather in South Africa at the moment. Very hot and dry conditions along the coast or in the Cape. And in the northern... Oh, there we go. There's a hyena with something in its mouth. And there's clearly a bit of action going on here. Remnants of last night's meal, I'm sure. I'm not sure if that looks like a horn or a leg. Looks a bit like a leg. The hyenas are certainly looking comfortable in the shade there. One's laid down and the other one is probably going to chew on its bone near there. It's always quite funny how hyenas look quite interesting when they walk, but it's actually quite an effective and a rapid way of moving. They when they need to get somewhere, they can cover quite a bit of distance with that walk of theirs. And obviously they're not necessarily built for speed, but more for covering long distances when they kind of get a bit into that gallop of theirs. I imagine there's probably a den near here, since they're going in that direction. So this hyena we saw for the second time is actually maybe not the same hyena. There's clearly quite a bit of action going on here, but that's very cool. It's nice to know this is something for future reference at this camera, for me anyway. Willow, you had quite an interesting and relevant question, asking why do female spotted hyenas have a pseudopenis through which they urinate, mate and give birth? So, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It is a fake male or fake male genitalia. It's merely modified female genitalia to look like that. That's hence what it's classified as that. But it's because of the way their hormones shape and develop during or before birth. The female hyenas are exposed to high levels of androgens. So this masculinizes or masculinates their external anatomy, and which causes that. And it also ties in quite closely with the female-dominated society. Let's remember, hyena clans are run by females. There obviously will be a few males higher up in the pecking order, but they are never at the top, and the females rule the roost. So, yeah, it reinforces social status, reduces forced mating because the males must accept and cooperate with what's going on in the clan, and they cannot merely overpower a female. And that's what often gives a female hyena that large size that they're known for. There is of course a bit of a downside. Mating and giving birth are obviously challenging and risky, especially for first-time mothers. You do often hear sometimes of hyena cubs getting stuck in the birth canal and dying during birth, so it certainly does come with its challenges. One of those evolutionary trade-offs that does not come without a cost. But yeah, it's no mistake, of course, this has been honed over thousands of years. It's a hormone-driven adaptation tied to their social structure. It's just hyenas moving left, right and center here, and it's quite a challenge noticing what is a rock and what is a hyena for a second, but it is enjoyable to watch their antics. I was reading some interesting articles the other day. As much as hyenas are scavengers, a large majority of their prey is caught, contrary to what a lot of people think. Of course, a hyena will never turn down something that has been killed that it can scavenge, and that's obviously a high reward for low energy input. But yeah, it's very interesting to know that hyenas hunt the vast majority of their prey. LEPR, you are 100% correct that in hyena clans, the females wearing the trousers, and the males just go along with the flow. Yeah, the females are led by matriarchs, and yeah, it's quite interesting. I know there's been a lot of different parks or parts of Africa and South Africa where people have done quite a bit of work trying to understand the dynamics of hyena populations in an area, and it's also just, I think it's just as intricate and interesting as lion prides or leopards in an area. It's truly interesting to see how the different clans are quite territorial in their regions and the power struggles. Almost like a bit of a Game of Thrones, if you will. Well, we're going to leave our hyena search. It was fun while it lasted. I think we'll maybe come back if there's some more movement. Oh, no, there we go, the hyena again. But nonetheless, we're just going to pop on over to Founders. We'll be back now. Well, here we are at Founders. Bit of movement with the rhinos. I see two on the right have got up and about a bit, but the rest seem relatively stationary and quite lazy for the day. It certainly does look quite warm. Well, that rhino is looking super comfortable with his head atop the other one. certainly a wonderfully lazy day here at the waterhole for these rhinos. As I was saying earlier, it has been quite hot in the Eastern and Western Cape, and there have been a few wildfires. I believe more so in the Western Cape than the Eastern Cape. I do have a few friends in the Eastern Cape who have said there've been a few localized veld fires. But yeah, it is interesting to see the climatic differences between the north, where we are almost flooding in the Kruger region, compared to down here. Dex, you'd like to know if would rhinos be able to smell and identify fire? Definitely so, and they're not the only animal that would be able to identify or know this. So they would definitely be able to smell or recognize the smell of smoke, and the danger associated with it. We've just quickly popped over back to our hyena. Obviously this is not something we want to miss, so please bear with us as we try to keep up with the action. That looked like a bit of a zebra leg from what I could see, but of course are very exciting. I see there's a couple of hyenas. I think I saw two for a second. They are all over the show. I'm sure there is quite a well-established clan in this vicinity, and the den is somewhere behind these bushes. But just on the topic of the smoke, of course it doesn't apply just to rhinos. Many mammals will be able to associate the dangers from the smell of fire or smoke. Rhinos in that case have an excellent sense of smell, but as do most animals in the African bush, their sense of smell is incredibly heightened. And if you think how us humans can pick up the scent of fire, how much more acute it would be for wild animals. So obviously once they pick up these smells, or they maybe visually see it, but I'm sure they'd pick up the scent long before, they will try to move away from it and get away from it. It's not something they would head towards. But one can imagine this is quite an ancient instinct for them. Animals have evolved with fire, especially in the African savanna context. Fire is very much a part of it. So animals are quite well adapted to make use of these cues and get away. This is interesting. There's certain birds known as coursers in Africa that proliferate on burnt or overgrazed areas. So they're able to pick up the smell of smoke and rapidly arrive to these burnt areas, which they then feed on insects and also breed in them. It's quite interesting. Anyway, our hyenas have done another disappearing act. I'm sure it's not the last we'll see of them. We're just going to go back to the rhinos a bit at Founders.
Join me at Mabula Private Game Reserve from 6 to 11 May 2026 for a 5-night private safari for just 6 guests. Just incredibly exciting. Enjoy guided walks, take part in rhino conservation efforts, and explore Mabula's beautiful landscapes from open plains to rocky hills, alive with birds, animals, and vibrant plant life.
Join our expert guides at dawn for a live, immersive safari as the bush comes to life.
Found ourselves a chameleon, and look how he's changed color.
Every sunrise brings new discoveries.
Pound for pound, a leopard is one of the strongest cats around.
Ask questions, share your thoughts, and connect with nature live and in real time.
Great excitement, great happiness.
Start your day with adventure.
So that gives them quite a wide range of adaptability, and they eat almost the entire part of a carcass, whereas we often see big cats leaving bones, etc. Hyenas will eat the meat, the organs and the bones. So that allows them to look at habitats ranging from deserts to woodlands and savannas, whereas sometimes your cats rely quite a bit on certain types of habitats, such as cheetahs. They prefer open habitats, etc. There's a hyena moving with quite a big chunk of something in its mouth at the top there. They are all over the show. And also, once again, if we look at their social grouping, they're quite intelligent, and how they work together as a clan. They obviously will forage on their own, but then they'll also work as a clan to overcome challenges, etc. So that's also just another layer of adaptability that makes them very successful. It allows them to defend kills, raise young successfully. There's obviously always a lot of benefits of working in tandem with one another, or cooperatively. And if we look at also, I think one of the other key things is how hyenas hunt. They don't rely so much on speed or ambush. They run their prey down. They're built for long distance traveling or running, and it's a game of attrition. It's the same with wild dogs. They're also incredibly successful hunters compared to your cats that rely on a short burst of speed and stealth. So they will eventually get hold of their prey. It's quite fun trying to keep our eyes open in every direction. I must assume there's at least minimum 4 hyenas, but I do think there's quite a few of them busy, and the fact that all of them are carrying pieces of bones or meat around says to me there was a kill, or there is something going on in the area. So I'm sure there is a lot of action taking place. I must admit, it's also not exactly the easiest terrain to pick out a hyena in. These rocks are quite misleading. At least a few nice bird calls in the background to also keep us busy. That two-toned whistling one is the class's cuckoo that is calling. It's not calling at the moment. There we go, it's calling now. It's quite a beautiful sound. I must say, what also makes it quite challenging is how thick some of this vegetation is. So what appears to be flat could also have a few gullies or spots for the hyenas to disappear in, and you will not even notice it. It's generally why game viewing for safaris is not great in summer. If your predators choose to lie flat, they disappear rather rapidly. Whereas winter is always a much better time to get nice sightings of your big cats and hyenas or wild dogs. Anyway, I think the hyenas have won this round of tag for now. We did see some cool action, but yeah, I'm gonna head on over to Elephant Pan again. I must say, one would almost be forgiven for mistaking that not much has changed. These, I'm sure it's different elephants, but it seems to be relatively the same location and activity. Nice to see all these elephants just enjoying the water. I'm sure it's quite warm at the moment in Botswana. It does look a bit sunny that side. And when one is in the African bush, there's nothing better than a good old swim to cool down. See, there's a few comments about the pool party that made me think of Elephant Pan pool party. It's almost a nice mouthful to say a few times if you want to twist your tongue a bit. I'm sure you could add in a few more P's to find ways to make it even more complex. Yaku, who's 11, you're asking how do elephants swim underwater. So in situations like what we're seeing here, the elephants are not actually swimming, they're standing or rolling on their sides or bending down a bit. Obviously the water is deep enough, but yeah, they're actually just rolling around and lying in the water. But when they do need to cross very deep water in which they can't stand, they do the conventional doggy paddle, as we know, how most animals swim when they need to cross water. But it's not often that you see elephants really venturing into such deep water. It only really takes place when they're crossing big flowing rivers. They obviously, with their trunks and stuff, they can handle deep water quite sufficiently, but I don't know if I would necessarily rank elephants as the best swimmers out there. So they haven't got a risk of drowning, and obviously they can stand in very deep water. But yeah, make no mistake, when they need to get somewhere, they'll happily cross through the deep water to get where they need to be or where they want to be. On a lot of big lakes or dams in Africa, like Lake Kariba, elephants are known to swim between the different islands, and it's a great adaptation, because if you think of the food opportunities on some islands at these lakes, there's not much competition. So if an elephant's willing to swim there, it can get to all that tasty vegetation that it doesn't have to share with anyone. It's always nice to see elephants really making the most of these opportunities to swim. Obviously one doesn't really see it in the dry season, because most pans or water bodies obviously shrink quite a bit, so it's not deep enough. We often see quite a bit of Tsirandela. It's only really the smaller elephants that can still really splash around in the water, but they certainly do come across as incredibly playful. It's nice to see them enjoying it. We're gonna leave our elephant pool party and head on over to Moela. Quite a pretty scene here. Plenty of elephants grazing and milling about. We even got a few giraffes at the back in between all the elephants. Certainly a landscape dominated by giants this afternoon, or today. It's nearly afternoon. It's just mind-blowing to see how this landscape has changed so dramatically since we were here in the dry season, where it was completely barren, exposed soil. Now it just looks like one large grassland. It's truly beautiful. It also drives home the message how hardy seeds are, and that they are merely just lying in the soil waiting for their opportunity to sprout once the rains come around. But it's very nice to see the change in scenery. You can also hear a few birds calling. Not entirely sure what it is. It sounds a bit like maybe a moorhen or something, but I'm sure there's plenty of interesting birds hiding in this rank grass growth that has taken place. Eddie, you're asking where the most elephants in Africa would be. I think that title belongs to Botswana, if you would want to attribute it to a specific country. Of course, the elephants in this region move between a number of countries, between Zimbabwe, Angola and Namibia and Zambia. It's actually quite it's known as a transfrontier area. Kaza for short. I must double check what the full meaning is. But the elephants move over quite large distances, and of course there's no fences. The borders are merely just lines on a map. But the elephants move between a number of parks in the area and different habitats. So they have got a lot of roaming space. But it does come back to the fact that Botswana has done a tremendous job of looking after the elephants and protecting and conserving their wild areas. Hence why there's such a booming elephant population. Not just elephants for that matter, but also other animals. Wildebeest, zebra, giraffes, lions, leopards, all of the above are incredibly well conserved throughout Botswana. And Botswana is quite well known for their safari industry throughout the world. It does look like the main focus for these elephants today is some water and mud. I don't see too many of them really grazing or focusing on feeding too much. I see a few of them are eating grass, but I think the main reason they're all congregated here is to get some or apply some mud and cool off a bit, and also get some sun protection. One would say almost quite a hypnotizing and peaceful scene with all the elephants and giraffe just milling about. It's funny, some of those giraffes are almost looking quite short as they wade through some of the depressions here in the channel of the riverbed. Obviously it's not flowing at the moment, but there will be parts that are flowing or there's water underground. can certainly get a good idea of why Botswana is known for their large elephant population. If we just look at the screen here, there appears to be an elephant almost in every direction or spot. Simply stunning. Anyway, we're going to leave these elephants to do their things and head on over to Tau. Another Ellie. I always enjoy seeing them here at Tau when they come across the water, but to feed on the grass growing inside the waterhole. It's quite pretty, and they get nice and close to the camera, so you can really see them up close and personal. It's also a good display of their strength when you see how much energy and strength it takes for them to maneuver through the mud. You can imagine it's not easy for such a heavy animal to negotiate it, but elephants are certainly the 4x4s of the mammal world. You'll often see them climbing up hillsides or mountains that you would not think they could get up, and at the same time you also see them crossing swampy habitats that you think that would also be an issue for them, but they can go anywhere and everywhere that they want to go. Even when us humans try to block their paths or put fences up or other ways, they find ingenious ways of getting around or through these barriers. Elephants are just incredibly intelligent at problem solving, figuring out problems in their environment and making the most of it. Also one of those incredibly adaptive African animals. Unfortunately, it does bring them into conflict with humans quite often when they raid crops or cause damage. So it's always a tough one to balance. But I think in this part of human history we're getting a lot better at working with nature and not against it anymore. I always really enjoy watching elephants eat grass with long roots, how they put it in their mouth in a certain direction and then basically cut it off above the roots with their molars, and the roots drop to the floor, and then they just carry on eating the green tasty parts of the grass. It's amazing how they do this. It's also interesting, it's always the same direction.
See you out on safari.
At Wild Earth, we believe every story has the power to create change. That's why we've launched the Wild Earth Impact Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to conservation and social impact. By showcasing conservation stories, we can change lives, protect nature, and empower communities. We have partnered with Empowers Africa to accept tax-deductible donations from US donors. Your donation will help fund critical programs that support our mission. Join us and be part of the change. Join our expert guides at dawn for a live, immersive safari as the bush comes to life.
Found ourselves a chameleon, and look how he's changed color.
Every sunrise brings new discoveries.
Pound for pound, a leopard is one of the strongest cats around.
Ask questions, share your thoughts, and connect with nature live and in real time.
Great excitement, great happiness.
Start your day with adventure.
I assume it's been quite some time since an elephant waded into this part of the pond. The grass is looking very lush and long. So the local gardener services have been overdue, clearly. Can't tell if he's maybe... No, he hasn't switched sides. He's still eating with the roots on the left hand side of his mouth. That's the way he likes to do it. Probably has a lot to do with the way he pulls up the grass and then just twists it that way. But amazing how dexterous and agile they can be with their trunks. It's not just a matter of shoveling food into their mouth and chewing it. They are quite careful how they do it. It makes sense. Obviously if they spend time chewing sand and dirt, it would damage their teeth quite rapidly. And one often finds older elephants feeding on softer vegetation like these grasses, etc. It's a bit easier on their teeth, and obviously as they get later into their years, their teeth eventually run out, so they will start to focus on softer foods to keep them going. But this guy is having a good mud bath right now. You can see him sitting on his bum there. We're going to leave our elephant bull a bit and pop on over to Lentor. My favourite little firefinches here. Definitely sounding quite lively here today at the waterhole with the little birds. I think this has quickly become one of my favourite little spots to get up and close with the little seed eaters. These look a bit like Jamison's firefinches. Their beaks don't look too red to me. It is a little challenging to see, but from what I can tell, they look like Jamison's firefinches. Also that reddish wash on the back of their necks also lead me to believe that. Very pretty little birds, not often or easily seen out in the bush. You only really get a chance to see them when they come down to drink. The rest of their time is spent in a rather dense bush, and they obviously don't sit still, so they disappear quite quickly, so it's hard to get a good look at them. Willow, you'd like to know, I'd love to do a birding trip too. Strangely enough, I saw a YouTube video about Singapore and the forests and the city there, and that was quite interesting. It piqued my interest. But keeping it homegrown and local in Africa, I think I'd really like to go to East Africa. There's a lot of interesting birds found in Kenya and Tanzania. There are also a number of interesting habitats. There's forests, savannas, so there's quite a few birds I would actually like to see there. You only really get on that side of the continent. It's definitely quite high up on my list. I have of course travelled Southern Africa relatively extensively, so there's not too many birds I have not seen in Southern Africa. There's maybe a few. I'd also like to visit the west coast of Southern Africa at some point to see a few more of the arid bird species. Here's quite a nice surprise, a cutthroat finch there with these striking markings on his throat. It explains his name quite well. Very pretty little bird. Unfortunately, he did not stay too long for us. But yeah, I'd love to hear from some of the viewers if any of you are avid birders or are dreaming of going to spots to look at birds, please pop them in the discussion. Lola, you'd like to know what is Kenya's national bird? I will admit I need to actually double check myself on that one. It's actually not something I'm familiar with. I think it might be a crowned crane, but I might also be mixing that up with Uganda or Rwanda, one of those East African countries. But yeah, I'll double check that one. There was also a question from Rizuzu asking me to repeat the name of these birds. So the small little red ones are Jamison's firefinch, from what I can tell. And then the other ones with the red stripe across their throat, that is known as a cutthroat finch. Unfortunately, the cutthroat finch comes and goes quite rapidly here, and the firefinches are behaving a bit better. One should also keep an eye out for red-billed firefinch. From what I can see, they look like Jamisons. Obviously, it's always a bit easier with a pair of binoculars. The resolution is always a bit different through the cameras, but they do look like Jamison's firefinch. I think the camera's also making them look quite big, but these birds are incredibly small. They're quite tiny little seed eaters. But I'm very sure the way this waterhole has been set up here by Lentor, I'm sure by the lodge management, they have placed these thorny branches strategically near the water. It's often how your small sea eaters like to approach a water spot. They won't really come drink if it's exposed. Some of your waxbills will, but they feel a whole lot safer if they've got a bit of a thorny refuge or some branches to dive back into. So obviously when a lot of predatory animals, but mainly other raptors, will try and grab hold of them. And that makes sense if we look at their size. They're incredibly small, so their defense is to stick to dense, thick vegetation. Nearly got our 5 inches in focus. And these ones' bills are looking a little red for me. So to answer the burning question, with regard to what Kenya's national bird is, it is a lilac-breasted roller. So I was a bit off there, but it's always good to check these things. But quite a fitting national bird, I would say. Lilac-breasted rollers are incredibly stunning. I don't think we've really seen them at any of the waterholes before, not to my memory. Trying to think maybe if we've had one pop by here at Lentor. Oh, there we go, here's a nice shot of a cutthroat finch. That was the female that now came in. She doesn't have that red marking on her throat. Quite pretty. Lilac, you're asking, are there any turacos in Kenya? There are quite a few. There are a range of different species. I do need to read up a bit on their distributions, but I know there's quite a few in the forested areas. Nothing like the ones we get down here. Kenya also has its own type of go-away bird, and in my humble opinion, I think it looks a whole lot more pretty than our grey go-away bird that we get. Their one is a lot more striking. It has come down here once or twice to Lentor. Very pretty. Looks like we also have a mongoose here. No, that's a squirrel. Okay. Had me for a second. One of the ground-dwelling squirrels of Africa. Also getting a bit of a refreshing drink. Super Mongoose, you were mentioning that you went to Zambia once to look for the mythical shoe bull. I'm very jealous. That's also somewhere I would actually love to go one day. But you were mentioning how due to flooding you weren't able to get into the area, and timing is a big factor. I think for any dedicated or avid birder, timing becomes a very interesting thing to most of us. We start to realize how you really have to be at the right time to see certain birds. There's a number of birds that are only found at certain times of the year while they're breeding, or they've got plumage that makes them quite beautiful, and throughout the rest of the year they lose it. So also the same with these floods that are occurring in the greater Kruger region. Makes it great for bird watching. Well, since our birds and squirrel have given us the slip here, we're going to pop on back over to Founders and the sleepy rhinos. and looking very content. I don't think any of them have really moved much more than a muscle, maybe the flick of a tail here and there, but they are taking it very laid back. I'm sure it's quite hot. I did see in parts of the Western Cape yesterday, I think it was about 40 degrees. So I can only imagine how warm it is here in the Eastern Cape as well. And the best place to be is in a muddy waterhole, that's for sure. Tess with an interesting question. You'd like to know if big animals like rhinos and elephants get ticks. Of course, buffaloes would also fall into that category. So they're actually very good targets for ticks because they're quite slow moving and large. So nice big host full of blood for them to suck on, and their thick skin also make it easy to grab on. Of course, we don't, also at the same time with this thick skin, you don't really see it on the external areas, but you'll find the ticks in the softer areas, like around the ears, the tail, or at the base of the tail, sorry, the groin and between skin folds, which is also kind of the same with your antelopes. That's where ticks tend to accumulate, but of course they can bite them anywhere. But on your rhinos, buffaloes and elephants, that's chiefly where you see them. And that's why they rely quite a bit on oxpeckers to come help them out and deal with these tick infestations that get in the hard to reach places. Of course, elephants don't tolerate oxpeckers, so it's actually just rhinos and buffaloes and hippos that let the oxpeckers provide their services. But it is for that reason why we often see these bigger animals taking mud baths and coating themselves in mud. Not only suffocates these ticks, but when they rub off against a tree or a rock, it will also help remove the ticks. But of course, they can only get to so many spots. Once again, those vulnerable areas often are quite difficult to reach. I've also seen footage of rhinos lying in pans where terrapins will come and eat the ticks off of them while they lie there. It's quite an interesting and unique one. You won't always see it. Obviously there has to be terrapin in the pan or the water, but still very cool. I think it must be incredibly frustrating as an animal to be bitten by ticks and you cannot remove them yourself or really deal with it. I've been bitten a handful of times and it's incredibly unpleasant and itchy, and not to mention some of the blood-borne diseases that ticks carry. I've had tick bite fever once and it was rather unpleasant, putting it lightly. I think you'll also find the amount of time these bigger animals will spend in water also helps deal with the ticks. They will also eventually suffocate after a prolonged period of being underwater, because they also need to breathe. So that's also another way to help deal with it. But yeah, ticks are incredibly voracious creatures that are quite good at surviving. I was actually bitten by one through one of my socks the other day. It's quite unpleasant. Andre, you're asking why do we show the area where the rhinos are, as this shows poachers the location. They can use this info. So of course this is an agreement between Mantis Founders Lodge and Africam. Mantis Founders Lodge was happy to have the location displayed. It's one of the few cameras where we actually are allowed to show rhino sightings, etc. All these rhinos are fitted with tracking chips, or we've seen those anklet bracelets they wear. So all these rhinos are well monitored and looked after. The anti-poaching unit here at Mantis Founders Lodge is also quite exemplary and next level. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's nothing that they fear, but they are very confident in their ability to look after the animals, and they strive for it. You can also see these rhinos have been dehorned, which is another poaching deterrent. But yeah, it was an agreed upon matter with Mantis Founders Lodge. And in a way it's also quite nice, because we don't often get to enjoy rhinos on many of the streams or take notice of it. So it's quite nice to actually have a waterhole with rhinos around 24/7, that one can sit back and enjoy them and watch them go about their very docile lifestyle. See, we've got a little warthog at the back there. Anyway, as fun as it is always watching the sleepy rhinos, we've got some action for us at Elephant Pan, so we're going to head on in that direction. Of course the pool party continues, almost in the exact location that it appeared to be in last time. I'm sure these are at least different elephants, probably not the same ones. You can really see the young elephants are enjoying this water tremendously at their own personal pool. Must be fantastic being a small elephant. I don't think they've got many worries, but I'm sure it's as many adults also think back with fond nostalgia to their childhood when you were stress-free. Honestly, being a big elephant comes with its own problems and stress. It was actually quite interesting. It was an article I read, I think last week, was speaking about, and it actually just popped into my head now due to the fact we saw hyenas. But often here at Elephant Pan we've seen, you can see these elephants are sniffing around a bit. They've obviously picked up the scent of something that's got their attention. But yeah, nonetheless, that a lot of elephants in the Okavango region of Botswana are either tailless or have parts of their trunk missing. And as the author pointed out, there's actually very little snare poaching that takes place in Botswana, especially this region as well. And the reason these elephants are missing parts of their tails or their trunks is actually due to hyena clans that are quite large, and it goes back to what I was saying about them being very voracious hunters. Yeah, it's quite a stunning revelation if you think about it. I can't imagine hyenas going for elephants, but it certainly struck me something quite interesting nonetheless. Zuzu, you were asking if I've ever seen an arena trogon. I've seen them a few times. Quite early on in my teenage years, I saw one in the sand forests of KwaZulu-Natal on the eastern side of South Africa, but I wasn't much of a birder back then. And then ever since I got quite deeply into my birding, I have not really seen one properly. I've been on a couple bird walks to specific regions, and sadly only caught glimpses of them. One of the spots we had them come quite close, but we couldn't really see it in the open, and then they flew off. And once with my wife we had one right in front of us, and I got distracted by another bird and couldn't see it, and only once I put my binoculars down did I see the bird fly away. So it's still haunting me a bit, and I do hear them from time to time in the area I stay, but I'm sure another nice sighting will come at some point. Oh, there we go, there's an elephant with a bit of a stumpy tail. So yeah, rings a bit of truth about that article I was speaking of. Roz, I'm glad you're enjoying the elephant pool party. It certainly is an endless amount of fun. I think all animals at the moment are enjoying the pool parties quite heavily. We just need some buffaloes to also show us how they do it. Over the festive season, when I was in the Kruger, we saw quite a few old buffalo bulls lying in a lot of the rivers, cooling down. So as much as water is important for drinking, it's a great resource for dealing with the heat. Super Mongoose, you were discussing, or seeing the comments about your hunt for the infamous Pell's fishing owl. Also something I've only seen a handful of times, but relating quite a lot to the timing of looking for certain birds, especially the rare ones. Yeah, that is definitely a funny, there's a funny balance. There was also a reliable dam I know of in the Kruger Park, which is very good for wading migratory birds, and because the dam is so full now, all the sandbanks are underwater, so then your chance of seeing the birds disappears. And the same goes for the rare and endangered fishing or Pell's fishing owl. They're very specific about the type of hunting conditions they need to catch fish. Normally the water must be quite shallow, or there must be isolated or stranded pools in the river, and that allows them to capture their fish. As soon as the rivers flood, it's game over. They move on to different areas, and it becomes even harder to find a very cryptic animal. But those are the joys of timing adventures in nature to find certain birds. It is quite thrilling once you get it right, but of course also very frustrating when the stars do not align in your quest.
Join our expert guides at dawn for a live, immersive safari as the bush comes to life.
Found ourselves a chameleon, and look how he's changed color.
Every sunrise brings new discoveries.
Pound for pound, a leopard is one of the strongest cats around.
Ask questions, share your thoughts, and connect with nature live and in real time.
Great excitement, great happiness.
Start your day with adventure.
Can you hear that? The wild is calling.
A bit of dieback or drying up going on. It does seem like there's quite a bit of heat distortion, so I think it is swelteringly hot at the moment in Wangi. At the same time, this part of the world is technically very close to the Kalahari, so it's quite a hot part of southern Africa. I do see there's some water there. Actually, what I thought was mud is merely the reflection of the water's surface. It's just very still. But nonetheless, I'm very sure it's quite hot there at the moment. That was quite nice for a second. We had a vulture that I assume was drinking at the water's edge. Unfortunately, didn't stick around too long. I think there's actually another one to the left there, probably much closer to the water's edge. That or it's a goose, but there was a vulture. It feels like we haven't seen vultures in ages, but once the dry season rolls in a bit and the show times change again, we'll be seeing our vultures. I do miss them dearly. but all good things come to those who wait. Mara, you'd like to know what are the top birding hotspots in Zim and what makes each of them special. So I have not birded Zim excessively. I've been there a few times over the years. Hands down would be the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe, so Chimani Mani, those mountains on the eastern escarpment. There is a lot of forest and it's a foresty montani environment, so there's a whole range of birds that are found exclusively there. Almost too many to name. Seed crackers, different types of apellises, there's cuckoos, there's a host of birds that are found there. So a lot of people often like to go to that part of Zim to see those lifers or specialties. The central region of Harare has got a few interesting birds. Spotted creeper is one of them. It's just pretty much due to that Miombo type of forest or habitat. There's quite a specific range of birds that are found there. Also Bulawayo in the Matopus National Park, there's a couple Miombo birds you can see. So that's quite sought after. Once again, it comes down to the specific habitats and birds that are maybe found only in those habitats or regions. But that's kind of what you're chasing. And then of course right on the Zambezi River, Mana pools, etc. There's quite a few rare birds. Also up to Victoria Falls, there's quite a few rare or special birds. The special African pitta is found there, also only for a few months of the year, but it's one spot where a lot of people go to see them in southern Africa. And then there's a few other rare birds that hide around on the near the Zambezi, some flycatchers that are also really only found in that part of southern Africa, spine-tails, and also a few other firefinches. But yeah, Zim is quite an amazing spot to bird. I would like to go there a bit more in the future, but takes a bit of planning to get it right. See, we've got plenty of marabou storks, taking it easy also by the water's edge here. Quite a beautiful setting with all the birds just doing their thing today. Well, we're gonna, ooh, that's a lot of Egyptian geese, wow. We're going to head on over to Twin Pan to see something we actually haven't seen today. Keep it as a bit of a surprise. It's hippos, of course. Quite a busy bunch over here. There was actually a hammerkorp that flew in as we moved there on top of the one hippo's back. So I was having a disagreement or play fight there. Don't know why the hammerkorp really wanted to go sit there. Maybe it was hoping some fish would get disturbed that it could snap up. Always nice to spend some time with lazy hippos, especially in a big pod like this. Yes, you're asking what's my favorite and least favorite bird call. I think my favorite bird calls are probably for the cuckoos. I love the rhymes or the songs that go with it, especially the red-chested cuckoo. In Afrikaans is known as Piet my vrou, so that's always stuck in my head and it's quite a beautiful song. I think maybe on the least favorite front, it always obviously has to be one. It's probably between the blacksmith's lapwing or the Egyptian goose. Also, let's not forget the hardy-daw. Those are also a bit repetitive and harsh. I must say, I don't hear hardy-daws as much as I used to since I'm not in the suburbs of South Africa anymore, so I don't hear hardy-daws too much. But I think between those three, they're certainly at the bottom of the list for beautiful bird calls. It's certainly nice to visit a couple of the sunnier locations. I see a few of our viewers in the colder northern hemisphere are jealous. I do have a friend in Canada who's also sent me a few pictures. I'm quite glad I don't have to deal with snow. That being said, it's quite rainy and miserable where I'm here at the moment, but water is always, or rain is always very well received in the African bush. It's quite important. Paul, you're asking if hippos have hair on their tails. They do. It's not noticeable. If I could liken it a bit to an elephant's tail, kind of looks a bit like that. The tail hair is just much shorter. It's actually quite bristly. It almost looks like a bit like a toilet brush in a way, I guess. But yeah, hippos are covered in short little coarse bristly hairs. Covered maybe not the best word, but they've They do have some hairs and spots, and it's quite short and bristly. Got an egret swooping in there for a second. I would assume it's the little egret. They tend to hunt a bit like that, where they hover over the surface of the water with their legs dangling and pick up any fish on the surface. I'm hoping he'd stay around a bit longer, but he disappeared quite rapidly. Willow, you'd like to know if hippos spin or wag their tails rapidly while defecating. So they, I think essentially would be wagging it, but they swish it from side to side while defecating. Important to note, it's generally the dominant bulls that do this, and they'll do it in the water or at middens in or around the water source they live in. And sometimes further out you'll find it along hippo pathways deeper in the bush. But they tend to have specific middens where they spread their dung onto trees and the surrounding area. They do this to spread their scent. It's a bit of territorial scent marking, etc. And it's generally the dominant bulls that will do this. It can actually be a bit, I wouldn't say tricky, but it can throw you off sometimes when you're walking around and you actually find hippo dung that is not spread. It also comes in a bit of a loose ball in a way, but yeah, majority of the time the bulls will spread it like that, and then the females will defecate in and around the middens without really spreading it. What is cool to note when they do it in water, they spread it and then eaten by fish and algae, etc. It's a lot easier for them to break down, and hippos are incredibly important in the nutrient cycling system in water bodies in Africa, etc. Because they basically provide a lot of nutrients for aquatic habitats for plants and fish, etc. So they play quite a crucial role in nutrient cycling in that regard. I think it's often these little things that go unnoticed or unappreciated, and how crucial they are to the system. And when one of these is removed from the system, it can have large knock-on effects. We've got some excited hippo sounds, I think, there. Maybe a bit of a disagreement. These hippos are, I wouldn't really call this a pool party, but they are doing what they do best, taking it very easy in all this water. Also quite a bit of bird life around here. See, there seems to be a sacred ibis strutting around at the back there. It's a bit far, but it does look like a sacred ibis to me. So quite a pretty bird. All these waterholes with their vegetation and lusciousness will be attracting quite a few migratory birds or birds in general that we don't often see at the waterholes. It's nice to get that that diversity, or maybe a bit of a lucky package you could call it. You never know what you're going to see. Whereas in the dry season it's a whole lot more predictable. There we go, can you see our birds a bit better? And there goes the sacred ibis quite rapidly in the one direction. And then we've got some white-faced whistling ducks, and the one to the left of them is your knob-billed duck. But it was quite nice to see the sacred ibis for a moment. I'm sure it hasn't gone too far. I think that is a first for me. I don't think I've seen that on any of the cams before. The ducks are also taking it quite peacefully. It appears to be a female knob-billed duck. It hasn't got the large impressive knob on the bill that the male does. look quite striking and impressive when it's quite developed.
My name is Amy, and behind the camera with me is Paul. And I mean, to be able to share it with all of you. Fingers crossed, and I'll make sure I wear my lucky leopard socks as well.
Even a hyena coming into the action as well now. Oh my word! She's stalking the hyena now. Leopard, hyena, lion, all together in one shot. Oh! Woo! This is action-packed.
Join our expert guides at dawn for a live, immersive safari as the bush comes to life.
Found ourselves a chameleon, and look how he's changed color.
Every sunrise brings new discoveries.
Pound for pound, a leopard is one of the strongest cats around.
Ask questions, share your thoughts, and connect with nature live and in real time.
Great excitement, great happiness.
Start your day with adventure.
Out here, every wild moment counts, and as a Wild Earth explorer, you will not miss out. Watch the Wild Earth channel ad-free 24/7, and you can even rewind if you have missed out on something. Enjoy the behind-the-scenes video clips as well as fireside chat, or get the early offers on our travel experiences. It's the best way to stay connected and be part of the Wild Earth family.
Well, I think we've had a good run here at Twin Pan, so a couple of interesting things. We're going to head on over to Elephant Pan for the last bit of the show. Not too far from where we currently are, but yeah. Gosh, it seems like there's even more elephants than earlier. They are really coming in their droves today to take a swim. I can imagine this pan is quite a magnet for them, deep in the Mapani bush here. A great place to cool down. Of course, also elephants enjoy interacting and socializing a bit with each other. So I'm sure that's quite a fun way for them to spend their afternoon, or enjoyable is maybe the word I would use. You can see a few younger bulls getting into a tussle or two in the water, a bit of a water wrestling match. It's always interesting to see how the cows are when the bulls get a bit boisterous. I know they get a bit on edge as their calves can be injured, but everything seems to be in order for now. No chaos as of yet. And these two seem to be pursuing or chasing each other somewhat around in the water. But it all seems rather light-hearted. None of it is serious, of course. Certainly a peaceful and fantastic way to end off the show here at Elephant Pan. It's always nice watching the Ellies just do their thing. You can hear a lot of trumpeting in the background, so I think there's a lot of excitement and socializing taking place. There's a bit of tomfoolery taking place. It seems like there's about 5 youngish bulls there that are testing each other's strength and getting a bit rough and tough there. But once again, thanks everyone for the wonderful questions and comments today. It's really been a fun show. It was really nice seeing those hyenas early on, and as always we've had a couple nice birds to shake things up, plenty of wonderful elephant sightings. I hope everyone has a wonderful Sunday further. We'll see how the rain plays out here in the Kruger region, if it starts to flood or not. I see it is raining again, but I think just look on the bright side of all the wonderful life and growth it will bring. Hope everyone has a wonderful week ahead, and see everyone next time.